Welcome to a final session of Bach, at least maybe it's not going to be the final, but officially at the moment that's the way it is. And I have enjoyed working on all these pieces of music. It's given me a chance to get back to my roots as an organist and puts in tons of practice, and it's nice to get back into shape. Yeah, it's pretty hard on the back. And did I ever mention, here's one of the most bizarre little episodes from many years ago. I was maybe 20, studying at the Royal College of Music, definitely on the career path to being an organist, and I was home for the summer, and I went to the big fairground down in Toronto, which is now closed, and I was with a friend walking around enjoying the rides and so forth, and an older woman stopped me and said, "Hello, would you mind answering a question?" And okay, sure, fine. "Are you an organist?" Yes, I'm off duty. How on earth would you know I'm an organist? And she said to me, "Well, I'm a seamstress, and I do look after the trousers of certain organists, and I know that the back end of the trousers of organists are quite unique in that they are very shiny, and I guess it's from all this rubbing around on the..." So there's an interesting little bit of background to us organists. Apparently the backs of our pants are kind of shiny, so that's a little bit of something. Okay, for this last set I have opened it up to the choir, and two organ nuts within the choir who are great buddies of mine. I really enjoy playing for them, Max Debut and Pete Ferguson. I call them organ nuts because they're so knowledgeable about the organ music of J.S. Bach. And I asked Max for his choice. It is the Dorian Toccata, and Pete Ferguson complemented that with the Jig Fugue, two really exciting pieces. Now, I hadn't actually properly learned the Dorian Fugue, Dorian Toccata before, so I had a lot of fun really getting fussy and getting the fingerings correct and so on, and I hope I can do it justice today. I'm going to turn this over now to Max, who will tell you about his passion for organ music and the Dorian.
So Syd has asked me to introduce the piece he's going to be playing in this video, which is the Toccata in D minor, also known as the Dorian Toccata. It's from a larger pair of pieces called the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, but it's not the one you're thinking of. It's not the one that goes doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It's, I would say, equally as epic, but it was written slightly after the piece that you all think of when you hear Toccata and Fugue in D minor. It was written between 1712 and 1717, when Bach was probably around my age. So think of me, but more of a musical genius living in 18th century Weimar. Anyway, so to differentiate this from the Toccata and Fugue you're all familiar with, it's been given the nickname Dorian, as the piece was written not quite in the Dorian mode, but it wasn't given a key signature, and it was just notated in D minor with lots of B flats. The Dorian mode has the key signature of C major, and if you were to play all the notes from C major, but starting on a D and ending in a D, you would have played a D Dorian scale. And if you want to know what that might sound like, you can listen to or hum to yourself Drunken Sailor and give you an idea of what that kind of scale might sound like. So it's nicknamed the Dorian to differentiate it from the more commonly known Toccata and Fugue in D minor. The piece itself starts off with a very rapid 16th note motif that is just repeated throughout the whole piece. It's in some respects quite simple, and Bach just maximizes what this theme can do in the piece. It's quickly joined by a second hand, and then eventually the pedals come in with the theme. It's very, very similar, apart from just a minor version of the Toccata in F that Syd played a couple of weeks ago, and it was likely written around the same time. Rather than having the drone pedal at the beginning, though, this piece doesn't have the drone pedal, just the hands, and then the pedal comes in a bit later. It's got a tremendous amount of momentum and inertia and energy, and it just builds and builds throughout the piece as the theme repeats and repeats. But it's not boring. It's very, very exciting. I told Syd that it's a little like 18th century rock, which he enjoyed. But yeah, it's a very, very entertaining piece, full of energy, and full of, it's just a very enthusiastic and exciting piece. The toccata is paired with a fugue, which Syd isn't going to play, but you should probably listen to it sometime. One of the most interesting bits about the toccata is that it's one of the few pieces that Bach specifically noted which manuals to play on at which times. So Bach, at various points, says that the organist should play on the Oberwerk or the Ruck positive. And the Oberwerk in Bach's day in Germany was often what the great was referred to. So the organ, specifically right in front of the organist, the main bank of pipes in the organ. The Ruck positive was sometimes referred to as the chair organ, was a separate bank of pipes that was located directly behind the organist. Ruck positive meant, I guess, translates to back positive, at least according to the internet. The little organ placed at the organist's back was often the second main manual of the major organs at that time in Germany. Syd doesn't have two different banks of organ pipes to play with, so he plays the two pairings on the grate and then the choir coupled to the swell to try and match the intensity. And the voices play together and separately, and you can imagine Bach almost trying to create some type of communication between the voices, perhaps some type of lively debate or conversation, or an aggressive duet. It's probably, I like to think of it as some type of lively debate, but not like a US election type of debate, more of a should you put pineapple on pizza type of lively debate, slightly more friendly. Make of it what you will. The piece finishes on a major chord, and perhaps this is a happy outcome to the lively debate, but I'll let you decide.
Here now is the Dorian Toccata. friend Pete Ferguson, what do you think? What would match the Dorian Toccata? And pretty well instantly he came up with the Jig Fugue. Perfect, just delightful. It's such a bouncy, exuberant, crazy short piece. Oh, it's lovely. It's noisy, it's fast, and it's so full of energy. It's fun to play too. Jig Fugue, kind of dance, you can imagine all that stuff. And Peter's going to say a thing or two. I'm so grateful that he chose this one. Somehow, I think there's a bit of Pete's own character in this. He's such an energetic man, and I do thank him for his interest and for contributing what he's going to say right now. Pete?
So Syd asked me, why do I like organ music so much, in particular Bach organ music? It's funny, I've never really given it any thought until now. In my youth, pretty much all I listened to was rock music. Bands like Genesis, Peter Gabriel on lead vocals, of course, Deep Purple, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You get the idea. What do those bands have in common? Well, they have great keyboard players in Tony Banks, John Lord, Keith Emerson. Their style of play and brilliance shone through their music, usually with a strong rhythm, tempo and intricate fingering. Which brings me to the Bach Fugue in G, or better known as the Jig Fugue. Unusual in its own right, it is a standalone fugue with no prelude. But more importantly to me, a strong rhythm, a tempo and intricate fingering and footwork, with a theme or subject driving the composition. To be clear, there is plenty of organ music I'm not keen on, but there are three things for me that are a must. A great instrument, keyboard excellence, and of course, brilliant acoustics. Resonance probably being top of the list. So whether it's Bach's Dorian in D minor or the Jig in G major, turn up the sound in a room with great acoustics and listen, it really does rock.
Thank you, Pete. Much appreciated. One of the frustrations in thinking about J.S. Bach, why he wrote his music, how it all came about, what he was like, all those things, we just don't have any material. However, there is a glimpse early in his career, and it's because, just pay attention, those of you who take minutes for board meetings and so on, because it's in the minutes of the town council from way back in 1706 or so, or somewhere around about there, we get a lovely insight into the young Bach. So let me just step back for a minute. Age 17, the kid is a genius, not only at playing, performing, but also anything to do with organ building. And he has been hired to check out the new organ in the church in Arnstadt. They're very proud of it. It's a fabulous machine, and he's been working in conjunction with the organ tuner, so he's there. At the age of 17, he's the #1 organ consultant in Germany. So he's there, and he also gives an organ recital afterwards. Well, I guess the town council figures we're due for a new organist. Well, take a chance. We'll get this brilliant young kid, 17 years old. So Bach has a high-paying job. He's single. He's the guy. He's definitely the leading musician in town. There's no one of his match. And he's the organist of the church where 3,500 people come to church each Sunday. You can still visit that church. It's even got the Bach Church label on Google Maps. And you can see the organ at the back, way up high on the wall. Fabulous machine. So there he is. And I need to introduce another element. Up the road a bit, or across the way, the Count has a castle. The Count is not his boss, and Bach does not work for the Count. However, the Count has married and has a wife who's really keen on the arts. So a lot of money is spent having all kinds of dances and concerts and mini operas and stuff just down the road at the castle. And a lot of out-of-town musicians of very high quality are brought in to perform at the Count's castle. And of course, pretty soon Bach is there. We don't quite know what he was doing. Was he playing the keyboard, playing the violin, doing something else? But he was a part of this. So all this is going to come to us because in the minutes of the town council, there are a couple of things that are noted against Bach, and he's called to make an account of himself as a teenager. Maybe at this point he's about 19 or 20 years old. Right, so here's the scenario. In his job description is not included work with this band of student musicians at the church, and they added in. this is a great irritation to the young Bach, because they're not very good. They're drunk. In fact, one of them is being held to account because during the sermon, it is noted that this one of these choral people went down and visited the wine cellar during the sermon on Sunday morning. So they're a pretty rowdy bunch, and they're not very good musically. In fact, Bach got thoroughly ticked off with one of them, someone called Gayer's Bach, this guy here, and he actually called the guy a Zippelvergottist, which I think we could interpret to mean as a nanny goat bassoon player. So this guy here, Gayer's Bach, was pretty ticked with young Sebastian and was out to get him. Right, we can move ahead now with the next theme. And thank you, my friend Don Barnett, for lending me a Napoleonic sword. I know it should be 100 years earlier, but anyway, here's a nice sword. So it would seem that Bach was performing at the castle one evening, and he was walking home, still dressed up in ceremonial costume to perform with the count at his castle, and the ceremonial costume included a sword. And he was coming home with 3 young women, having had a short stay at the organist's apartment at the castle before, walking home late at night. Well, guess who is waiting for J.S. Bach in the market square with a big stick? That same nanny goat bassoonist, Gayer's Bach, and he attacks J.S. Bach with the stick late at night in the market square while 5 of Gayer's Bach's friends watch on. Well, things get a little bit excited, and Bach, he's got a sword, so he pulls it out and defends himself. And in fact, he punctures the coat of this Gayer's Bach several times. Unfortunately, the friends broke it up before Bach finished off Gayer's Bach. So all this comes to the town council to be discussed. And so thank you for taking minutes, and you can go read all those minutes going back hundreds of years for the town council, and you'll find this story of Bach. Now, something else happens along the way to add a little bit more to the story. As the council is bringing Bach to account, and we really wish we could have his written replies, which we don't, but they say, oh, and by the way, Sebastian, we know that you took a, however you pronounce that, but basically that means a young female visiting woman. We know that you took her up into the organ loft at the church, and you know darn well, Sebastian, that women are not allowed to sing in our churches, and so you had this young woman up in the organ loft. If I might divert for a moment, my experience in Europe, England and so on, is that many organs, in fact, you do go up a winding staircase, and the organ is not like this out in the open, but it is kind of tucked away. And I can vouch, as many organists can, that this presents certain amorous opportunities for a young organist. So anyway, was anything going on there? We do not know. We do not know what happened with this beautiful young visiting singer who Bach took up into the organ loft. But it was noted by the town council. So here we have Bach up in the organ loft, singer, attractive young woman, and might have occurred to him that, is there a piece I could play for her? And I have no authority whatsoever in suggesting that the piece I'm going to play now is the piece he would play, but it kind of fits. It's called the Jig Fugue. It's based on one of the dances, and my goodness, they've just been up partying at the Count's. Every dance that the Count would have would include a jig of some sort or another. So if he wanted to really pull out all the stops and to impress this young visiting woman singer, perhaps he would have chosen a piece like the Jig Fugue. I kind of feel it's a good thing. And all right, by the way, when you play this Jig Fugue, it's you really are dancing. You are dancing on the pedals. It's exciting and it's fun, and it just would be the perfect piece for Bach, having let the visiting singer come up into the organ loft, just to say, well, can I play you a piece of music? And who knows where it led? Don't know. Anyway, I will now play the Jig Fugue. I would like to thank my wife Pam for turning pages today and pulling out a few stops here and there. Thank you, Pam. made it. The 3-minute mile for the Jig Fugue. Thanks, Max and Pete and everyone else.